Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm Dami Miller with the Writers Roundtable, and tonight our speaker is going to be York Mayor Michael Helfrich. He's going to present about the meaningful and tragic life of Glenalvin Goodridge, and Goodridge was a photographer from York County. So, Michael, if you'd like to come up and speak.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here with all these extremely knowledgeable people. That said, if you hear something completely crazy that I say, please, you can jump in and correct me at the time, because I know that we all learn different things. Did someone leave a mask up here?
Yeah, I did.
Here, come on, Linda. Nope. Touching other people's masks. But of course, we all have access to different information all the time, and we put together ideas of what history was, a lot of times with very little information. So I love to just be here with you all and imagine that we can add these things together. And that was really my impetus for putting this project together, was that I knew there was a lot going on. There were images out there, but nobody had looked at them in any kind of, or at least I hadn't seen anybody look at them in any kind of order and see if they told us a story. Now, before we get into this, let me start with responding to Jim. Jim, there is no way I can respond to the question of Thomas Paine in a brief period, other than to say that almost every history book from Foner on down was incorrect about where Thomas Paine was during the time when York was the capital of the United States. He's very clear in his May 16th letter to Benjamin Franklin, which is one of the few existing letters from Thomas Paine, that he was all over the place. He was at the Battle of the Kegs in Philadelphia, then he was over in Lancaster, then he was in Princeton dropping off his chest of important papers, and then he came to York to collect his paycheck around March 7th, 1778. Of course, he wrote the part of the Fifth Crisis, is dated in March 19th, 1778. So he was definitely in York. Where he stayed, I will just add this one thing, and that is that Samuel Adams received a letter around April 11th of 1778 from, I believe it was John Lovell, a delegate to Congress, and it said, don't expect to get accommodations here. The winter was over, things were getting packed. And so while early on it is quite logical that Paine would have stayed at James Smith's office at the square of York, by April and May of 1778, there was a lot going on. So it is certainly logical that the oral tradition of the Cook's house, being the house where Thomas Paine stayed, was probably accurate for that period from late April or early May until the time when Congress left York. It's very likely, if you read the article, he's back and forth across the Susquehanna 4 times in 4 months at least. So he's all over the place. I still can't answer the question other than the existing historians are wrong. And there's plenty of evidence to support the local oral tradition started by W.F.O. Rosenmiller, who said that in 1882 and 1883, his father, when driving from the Rosenmiller store up to the Rosenmiller farm, would point across the Codorus at the stone house and say, that's the house where Thomas Paine stayed when he was in town. Please read the article. Enjoy. There are copies for $2 because it's an old journal. There's copies for $2. If you don't buy them, I'm going to buy the rest of them. You got any more boxes of those? Because I'm going to buy some.
I'll put a link up.
Oh, okay. Put a link up. Thank you. Thank you. Now, for why I'm really here. I'm going to go briefly through as I said, the meaningful and tragic life of Glenalvin Goodridge. And then I also want to make sure there is some attention paid to the work that I just completed last night on cataloging 47 images taken by Glenalvin Goodridge. You may have heard recently that a collection was donated to the Smithsonian that has probably, I'm guessing, somewhere between 5 and 10 also other images of Glenalvin Goodridge. It was 40 total daguerreotypes between three of the most prominent African American early photographers, and then some other daguerreotypes of early African Americans. So I'm guessing, I know that there are 5 or 6 that I have already documented, but we'll get some more. But when speaking with the Smithsonian, they're not going to have those processed until 2023. So I decided I wasn't going to wait, and we're going to start off with the first edition that at least gives us all something to work from. And as you historians know, any history is a working document, and we're always learning. So I want to encourage people now I'll put the whole thing online. It's only 12 pages long, but you can utilize this and maybe check out your old cased photos at home. Let's find these Goodridges. Let's find the other ones too. J.T. Williams, I'll talk about him later, or other early photographs. When we bring all this knowledge together, we get to see a much larger picture than when we look at them one at a time. So I would encourage everybody to take a look in the old chest or in the drawers and see what you have hidden in there. So let me start off. Many people know about William Goodridge and his amazing rise from slavery into the most prominent African American businessman of his time. And not only businessman, but of course his work with Frederick Douglass and other members that were working on the Underground Railroad. And I encourage you now, please make an effort to go over to the Goodridge Freedom Center. It is, I think it's open by appointment right now, but it is an amazing place. It's at 123 East Philadelphia Street. Easy to remember, 123. Easy as 123 East Philadelphia Street. And it is important very much because of the Goodridge family and their presence here, their involvement in the Underground Railroad movement, and just what appears to be a pretty predominant acceptance of a strong example of a healthy and wealthy or semi-wealthy African American family in our community. And just one example, because this whole area over here around Philadelphia Street included the Gray family and some Smallwoods and other folks that were working on the Underground Railroad, and quite a few of which are buried at Lebanon Cemetery. And that's another place where I would encourage you to learn more about it and visit it with respect, and hopefully visit it with someone from either the board or from the Friends of Lebanon Cemetery, because they are also full of knowledge. So the first generation is William Goodridge. William Goodridge gets married and has his first child, Glenalvin Goodridge, in 1828, February of 1828. By the time he is about 18, he is 17 or 18, he's a teacher in the African or colored school, is what it says in the books. But of course, an early African American school, likely not a school building, but probably within a church somewhere. That they didn't have their own buildings yet at that time, again, from my knowledge. And a guy named Reinhardt comes traveling through and puts an ad in the paper and stays at his father's building, which was on the corner, and I think the foundation is still there, of 1 West Market Street. And his father at the time had built the largest building, the tallest building in York. Now, I said he was pretty well accepted. That didn't mean there weren't people that didn't accept. Obviously, whether it's today, 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, there have been and continue to be racists, bigots in York County. And we've always had great people working at the same time that these ignorant people have been working in York, and we continue this battle today. In this case, the Goodridge building, I'll just throw that out there because the guy that built the building then, catty corner, legend says, I don't know if there's any written evidence of this, Jim, that he built it because he didn't like that an African American had the tallest building in York. So coincidentally, Glenalvin Goodridge ended up in that building for one of his later studios. But his first studio was in his father's building. This guy Reinhardt comes, and he's a traveling itinerant Daguerrean. So this is very early. Imagine this. Photography was invented in 1839. 1839. By 1847, only 8 years later, an African American picks up the idea that he wants to be part of this brand new science. Brand new. Never, ever had sun and silver and chemicals come together to place an image that you could see. But prior to this, it was only man's interpretation through drawing and things like that. This is the first time, 1839, that you could have an image like this. And it still took another couple of years at least a year, to perfect making an image of a human. So within 7 or 8 years, we have this young man. He's only 18 years old, who's now excited about a new science, something brand new to the world. Very soon after this itinerant leaves, Glenalvin Goodridge sets up his first studio. And his first studio, as I said, is on the 3rd story of China Hall. He has advertising in the newspaper in July of 1847, the whole way through early 1848. And then by April of 1848, he moves to his dad's house, or his family's house. I guess he's living there also. The whole family is living at 123 East Philadelphia Street. And he sets up his studio at that time. Now, this first image, and I'm going to go back and forth a little bit, but I'll show you the first couple images. This first image was taken either at China Hall or more likely, well, it's hard to say. It's either at China Hall, either in the square of York, or at 123 East Philadelphia Street. So he moves to his father's house. Yet another image that was done now this one almost definitely was done at his father's house at 123 East Philadelphia Street. And I found these beauties in the marvelous world of eBay that are actually dated. These are the family, or the wedding photos of Leah Robb and Joseph Fitz. Everybody know that name, Fitz? Around York County. Fitz is right in Central Market. They've got their wedding photos taken on March 17th, 1850. Glenalvin Goodridge was in his father's home. His studio was there until August 21st, 1850. To my knowledge, these are the only 2 documented, dated photos that are verified to have been taken in the Goodridge house. So they were that was very exciting. I do want to mention also that I have been actively, my interest in this came about when I was at the opening of the Daguerrean studio at the Goodridge Center. So daguerreotypes, the folks that made daguerreotypes were either called Daguerreans or daguerreotype artists. If you look really closely, you can't quite see it, but on his little black label there, it says daguerreotype artist. But I went to this opening, and what I learned was they had all these amazing things. They had set up a studio. They've replicated a studio in the original location, but they didn't have any Glenalvin Goodridge images. And I said, this can't be. And in my quest for York history, I found, I think in September 2019, my first Goodridge. And then I connected with Rebecca Countess and Frank Countess. And they said they also wanted to see images going to the Goodridge Freedom Center. So with my sleuthing and Frank and Rebecca's financial support, we have been able to get 4 images so far, 4 of the most important images known in the Goodridge world, because these 4 images contain 8 individuals, all of whom are identified, which is very rare. Some of whom are the family of Judge Fisher, who's going to come to a very important role towards the end of my biography here. So I know I have to move a lot faster if I'm going to get through this. One thing I did want to say, though, this studio over at 123 East Philadelphia Street, like within the last 2 years, I have now run in these circles, these very close, tight-knit circles of daguerreotype and ambrotype. I'll teach you about that in a minute or two, but these enthusiasts. And they've been so kind. They didn't know that much about this, but from everything I'm told, this is the one and only location in the world where a Daguerrean studio has been replicated in its original location. Imagine that. We have that 2 blocks away. So one of the reasons why I'm doing this is I'm the mayor of York. I'm also, while I'm a historian, I'm looking for ways to promote York City. An international destination, it might be a niche, but people are going up to Boston to look at places where the buildings don't even exist anywhere. And they're like, oh, that's where this studio was. We've got the studio. And one of the very first African-American photographers ever in the world. Definitely top 10, probably top 6 or 7 first ones. So we've just got amazing history here from the African-American history, from the photography history. We have to do, I think we need to do a better job sharing it with the world. And I hope we do, and I hope this helps. So leaving 123 East Philadelphia Street, the Goodridge then went back to the square in the Center Hall building and had his studio there for 5 or 6 years. Now, right after he got his studio, he got married and to a wonderful woman by named Rhoda, by the Presbyterian minister and abolition leader, Reverend Daniel H. Emerson. So again, these connections with abolition. They just keeps repeating all through the story of Glenalvin Goodridge, not just and his sister Emily, and others. It's just such a strong family working to help enslaved people realize their potential in their life. Shortly after getting married, I found a neat article and I'm searching for this photo. That the Patapsco Fire Company of Baltimore was here in York, and he took an outdoor image, I'm assuming an outdoor image, he took an image of the fire company. And so they wrote a nice little thank you note in the York newspaper saying, thank you for taking such a nice image of us. So imagine a fire. So I've talked to my contacts down in Maryland. Nobody knows of this image, but just a nice thing to think about. This is a young man, at this time, 23, gaining the respect of the community. So many individuals, you'll see when I go through here, so many individuals are supporting his interests, supporting his endeavors. Now, 1851 is also the time when there's a newcomer from Baltimore to York. So 1847 to about 1851, he had the monopoly. And he's the first, while William Wagner probably dabbled for a little while in daguerreotypes around 1845, Glenalvin Goodridge, starting in 1847, is the first professional photographer consistent in the city of York. So the first photographer of York. But he's also, he's gaining support and popularity, but he's an entrepreneur like his dad. If you don't know about his dad had his fingers in everything. He was, you've probably heard it's Christmas time, the Christmas trees. Charge a couple pennies for people to come see Christmas trees over at 123 East Philadelphia Street. He was going to New York and Philadelphia and getting all kinds of goods and bringing them to York. And in 1853, Glenalvin won 2 prizes at the York Fair. He only came in, and he had won earlier prizes at the York Fair, but in 1853, he only got second place for his daguerreotypes that year. But he got a diploma for his coffee extract. So he's doing, he's working multiple plans here. He's trying to do everything he can to make money. So he continues to be very successful and very competitive with as this new industry is growing, competition is growing. He's changing things. Around 1854, something new comes out. Now, when you go over and see the daguerreotypes that are over there, you will find them hard to see because they're plated on silver, which is essentially a mirror, and you have to catch the light just right to be able to see these things. So in 1854, an American named Cutting, working with Isaac Wren, who actually ended up in York and dying in York decades later. Another strange story for another day. But these two folks worked together and got a patent for putting images on glass. And putting the images on glass is called ambrotype. And so on October 30th of 1855, the York Gazette runs a very nice article saying, Glenalvin Goodridge is just always innovating. And here we just had the opportunity to go and see this new process, the ambrotype process. Now, it's an October 30, 1855 article. We don't necessarily know how early before October 30th he had started the process, but we know that it was patented in July of 1854. So sometime in that year, he had started the ambrotype process here in York. He then moved his gallery again. His gallery was called the Extra. Let me see. Go down. I'll come back from. That's not going to be helpful. It's going a page at a time, but we'll work with that. Let's see here. I'll be going back, but I wanted to show you something a little fancy. Here you can see J Goodridge's Extra Skylight Gallery. So they had to be able to bounce sunlight off of mirrors or through windows to be able to get the chemicals on the silver to react to take the image. So an extra skylight was a big thing. But he closed the Extra Skylight Gallery and moved to Goodridge's American Photographic Gallery, and also back in the square, or he changed the name, I should say. And he was there, and 1856 approximately. October 1857, he wins the York Fair's prize for the best milch cow, the best milking cow. He had multiple interests, and the Goodridges, as well as the Grays and others, were also very interested in horses. I'm still trying to get permission from Bill Frazanito, who I met as a child but have not seen since then, to use his wonderful published outdoor daguerreotype of a man standing with a horse with stables behind him. Probably never be able to prove it, but I'm pretty sure that was the backyard of the Goodridge house. And I'm going to tell you why here in a second. But and also at the York Fair, when he had the best milch cow, he did. The judges couldn't decide between him and J.T. Williams, this newcomer that had come in back in 1851 out of Baltimore. You know how we are about people coming in from other places, And but he built a good business here. Oh, somebody from Baltimore back there? So unfortunately, the financial crisis of 1857, we've got these wonderful leaders, particularly in the African-American community, but in the entire community, but they were generous, and they helped other families out. And what happens in a financial crisis when you have a bunch of help out there, when you've co-signed for people and things like that? Bankruptcy set in. William Goodridge lost many, many properties across the city. Glenalvin Goodridge very specifically lost 5. two of them on Queen Street, kind of the corner of Queen and Philly, right around there, and then two in the alley behind Philly on the back of the Goodridge house. So this was just an African American stronghold community with the Grays and the Goodridges and others just all living in that area. And unfortunately, it took a big hit in 1857, and by 1859, Glenalvin Goodridge had lost two houses on those two houses, but he also lost a double frame stable. And what is in the alley behind the houses there? Unmarked non-residential buildings. So I think with their enthusiasm for horses, and I'm pretty sure that Bill Frazanito picture was taken right out the studio, because back then you didn't necessarily travel around a lot. There were a few photographers that really traveled around a lot with their equipment, but not many. So again, don't know if I'll ever be able to prove such a thing, but it is of interest to me. So after the financial crisis, Glenalvin Goodridge goes back to teaching again some more. 1858, he's teaching in York. 1859, he substitutes in Baltimore. Not sure how long he was living down there, but he was definitely in Baltimore, and the Grays were from Baltimore. Of course, his father was from Baltimore, but didn't really remember anything from Baltimore. His father was sent up here as a 6-year-old child and indentured into the tannery business. But so didn't, and you don't know what kind of connections they had. It is amazing over long distances how people stayed connected, particularly with the Underground Railroad. It's quite amazing. But he's back here by 1861, and not only does he publicly reopen his photography business, but he also opens a new studio over in Columbia. So now he's over in Columbia too. There are no, let me say it this way. I have not found any images that can be definitively placed in Columbia. I'm very interested, you can imagine, to try and find that. I've been over in the Columbia Museum. There aren't many daguerreotypes, or actually it would be ambrotypes. But he does at that time also say that he is that he is also doing collodion negatives, which means that he's starting to potentially produce paper images as well. And right after the 4th of July, 1861, I believe in the York Gazette again, it says that he took a 4x8-inch negative of the 4th of July procession from the window at the Hartman building. So now his studio is in the exact building on the southeast corner of the square that was built to diminish his father. So now he's literally on top of that building after they tried to do that to his dad. I like that. But soon everything collapsed. And on August 28th, I said meaningful, and I'll get to a lot more meaning, but you can already see the meaning in this young man's life. What he did, he took a completely new thing and brought it to York, crossed racial barriers, became successful, rebuilt himself, just such a strong individual. And then on August 28th, 1862, he was indicted for raping of a white woman in his gallery. And I will at this time give credit not only to Linda Reese. Is it Reese or Rice? Reese. It is Reese. Okay. Linda Reese she wrote the first article, I believe, ever on specifically on Glenalvin Goodridge with the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission.
This was published in the Daguerrean Annual.
Oh.
The Daguerrean Society.
And that's a copy that I haven't gotten yet. That's what, 1991?
No, something like that.
Yeah, 1991 copy of the Daguerrean Annual. That's an annual book that the Daguerrean Society, the people that are obsessed with these things like me, they have a great publication that comes out every year. The Daguerrean Society is you should look it up if you're interested in old images. But Linda Reese and then John Vincent Jazierski wrote the book called Enterprising Images. And while there are a couple of misstatements in there, it, as with almost every history book, it is a very solid history of the Goodridge, what would become the Goodridge photography dynasty. But before I get to the dynasty, let me tell you about the downfall of Glenalvin Goodridge himself. So some interesting things happen. There's a trial, and the young woman, Mary E. Smith, who lived on South Street, she claims that she was basically raped by Glenalvin Goodridge. She has a couple witnesses that support her, but she also has a witness that says that Mary Smith said that she'd give me $6 if I wouldn't show up and testify, and she said she'd get me a new bonnet if I went to Baltimore and just got out of town. And when she walked off with Wallace, Glenalvin's brother, and she came back with 3 coins and gave me one of them, Wallace Goodridge, the younger brother, is not at the trial. And in the census of July 1863, it says, gone to Canada. He did not stay. Some of the witnesses say it was Wallace that she was with voluntarily, and that she was concerned that she might be pregnant, and she had to have a reason why her baby might be coming out darker than if she had been with one of the soldiers over in Penn Park, because the soldiers were camped out. And she was known to have been hanging out with the soldiers. Just a real disaster. And looking for scapegoats against the evidence, Glenalvin Goodridge was found guilty and sent to the Eastern Penitentiary on February 24th, 1863. After being at the Eastern Penitentiary, his health declines rapidly. Now, I always have a question here. He got tuberculosis. If you know anything about making daguerreotypes, you know that it's a process of bathing chemicals in mercury vapor, and it wasn't uncommon that this kind of thing happened to the early photographers. But there's no doubt that prison would have exacerbated such a situation. And but his dad, Glenalvin's dad, William Goodridge, did not let up. He started an immediate campaign of petitioning and letter writing to the governor. This injustice could not stand. And I couldn't find this, but I think it is in the book. Glenalvin Goodridge was sentenced to 5 years. I believe at that time, a white individual who had raped a white woman was sentenced to 15 years. I've got to find and document that. But if that doesn't tell you something, and again, I'm waiting for the corrections from the historians out there, but that is something that is in my head, and I have to find the footnote to prove that again. But it seemed to be common knowledge that he didn't do it, and that they just needed somebody, and Wallace wasn't around. And so all these prominent citizens of York, 107 prominent citizens, religious leaders, business leaders, political leaders, they all petitioned the governor. I think it was 7 of the 9 people involved in the court case petitioned the governor. Finally, one of the governor's close friends, Dr. Bressler, petitioned him and said, look, even the judge, even if the Judge Fisher didn't write a letter yet, he was the one that oversaw everything, but if you push him, I think he'll support this too. And other people were not as kind. There were multiple quotes that said, this would have never happened to a white person in York County. This evidence would have never put a white person away. So the petitions ended up being successful. And he didn't have to do 5 years. He was actually let out about 1 year and 9 months into his sentence, December 15th, 1864. And on the condition that he and his family leave the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You can get out of jail, but all of you, I never want to see you again. We don't want to have a memory of you. We don't want to know about you in York. This entire trial, I can only find 2 articles. One when he was indicted and one when he was found guilty. I mean, the newspapers used to be pretty thorough. They weren't talking about this. So unfortunately then they got out of town and they went to visit his brothers who had not gone to Canada. Maybe they went to Canada, but then they came back to Michigan, to East Saginaw, Michigan. They went out and spent a little bit of time there. They went to visit his sister in Minnesota, and he passed away less than 3 years after being, what do you call that, when you're kicked out of somewhere? What happens when you're kicked out of a religion? You're excommunicated, basically. They were excommunicated and shipped out of York, never to return. But the story doesn't stop there, because his 2 brothers, William and Wallace, William O. and Wallace, had been working with him here in York, and they learned the process. They learned about photography. They started a dynasty in East Saginaw, Michigan, that lasted until 1922. 1847 until 1922, 75 years of a small business, African-American owned photography company. I believe a feat never to have been matched in the history of the United States. Meaningful, tragic. That's the life of Glenalvin Goodridge. So with that, I'm not sure how many of you are interested in the how am I on time there, Jim? Okay. The depth to which I go into these things, but let me share a little bit with you here. So I started, and I'll let you know when we have some names for people so that we can maybe associate it. I do want to thank very posthumously the Latimer and Fisher families for their donations to the Historical Society, because you will see this name come up over and over again. Those names come up over and over again. Anne Helen Fisher married James Latimer, so that both family collections kind of came together and at some point came to the Historical Society, now the York County History Center. So I was able to get these images. Most of them, I think 26, are from here at the York County History Center. The York County History Center, and I'm sure there's some more verification from some other folks. I'm hoping that my evidence will convince folks that these are the images I say are Goodridge's are his. I'll show you the reasons why. We are very blessed that Glenalvin Goodridge didn't seem to like change very much in his accessories. Some photographers had different backdrops every couple of months, had different furniture, had different things that they would have people holding. They had vases, they had curtains. Not Glenalvin Goodridge. He liked the same tablecloth, something I call the Moorish tablecloth. It's some kind of French damask, possibly, but I don't have I've asked some fabric experts and have not gotten a definitive answer on what this comes. It seems to be a French damask with a phoenix on it, and I'll show you that. But luckily, yeah, he didn't change much. And while and from every image I'll show you has the same tablecloth. So all 47 images have the exact same tablecloth. Probably 20 some have the same chair. And it's a very, very unique chair. I've never seen this chair. Sometimes you got to understand that just like today, if you're a photographer and you wanted to set up a studio, there were suppliers. And so you have, and I'll show you, there's probably 8 or 10 photographers that use the same tablecloth as Glenalvin Goodridge. So you can't just go with the tablecloth. You've got to go with the pose. I'm going to give Joe Shane a shout out here. Joe Shane turned me on to what he calls the down and dirty. That means you put your right arm over here. Well, it's inverted, so it would have been a left arm. But when we're looking at it, it looks like your right arm's over here and your fingers are pointed pretty straight down. And that comes out of Philadelphia. A lot of Philadelphia artists trained by possibly M.P. Simons or Marcus Aurelius Root. Some of those individuals over there kind of trained this area's photographers. And so you see this a lot in the Philadelphia area. But what I'm looking at and all the writing you'll see over here, first the date comes last. So you'll see the date is the first thing because this is a chronological compilation here. But the date is the very last thing that I come up with, unless it's on the case, as is the case in a couple cases. But you start off, what kind of image is it? Is it on silver or is it on glass? This is on silver. This one, luckily, we have a label on it. It says G.J. Goodridge, daguerreotypist. Oh, it doesn't say artist. It says daguerreotypist, York, PA. So that one's pretty plain and simple. These labels are underneath the glass usually, and the glass would be taped, hopefully, with the rest of the image. So that gives you a pretty good idea that that is the real deal. He put his name on it, you know. Then you date the case. You can date the cases. This is called a mat. You'll see different designs of mats. Different designs of mats were used during different dates. You'll see I'm talking about the table. Is he at a table? How many books are on the table? What kind of tablecloth is it? What is the mat? This guy has a top hat on the table, which he brought with him. That's not an accessory. What's the pad? The red silk pad. What size is it? 1/6. 1/6 means a plate of silver came about that big, and they cut it into 6 pieces, or they cut it into 9 pieces, or they had pre-cuts also that were stamped and sold. So here we have what I believe is the earliest image that I have seen anywhere from Glenalvin Goodridge. Close second. Her case is a little bit later. You'll see her mat's the same. Now she's got 2 books, and see the down and dirty pose? See that hand's hanging straight down? That case is a little later, so we dated that one at 1850. And that case was made by Myron Shue over in Philadelphia. So he's getting his products from Philadelphia, essentially, and getting instruction from Philadelphia as well. Then my tied for favorites are the couple here, and they have given us a date for them that really helps us. See the hands aren't quite specifically down. That's really the down and dirty when you're like. It looks almost awkward. But see the 2 books. This
That Robb family, were they related? Any of these people related to the contemporary Robbs
yeah.
or even the Fitz?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, they were were they Mennonites? I think they were Mennonites. They moved to Iowa.
Okay.
They moved to Illinois and then they moved to Iowa. And actually, it's great. This set came with documentation of their tombstones, with a letter from the family member saying, "Hey, this case was in a lot better shape when mom and dad had it. Don't know what happened to it in the move, but here it is." You know, this one came with all the bells and whistles for verification. And if you look really closely, how did you tell me to do this? Is it control? If you look really closely, now how do I get over? Okay. And down. The guy selling it didn't see this little thing in here. That's a Goodridge label. It was taped in. It was glued inside the case. Something I haven't seen anywhere else. But that was very helpful.
My contemporary plain people have a resistance to being photographed. Was that an issue back in the?
I am not sure. I know the Quakers seem to love it. There's a lot of Quaker photos out of Philadelphia.
Repeat the question, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For the audience.
So yes. So it was asked that contemporary plain people have objection to being photographed. Was it the same back then? I can tell you that there are many, many images of Quakers coming out of the Philadelphia area. I am not sure regarding Amish, Mennonite.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was the Anabaptists and maybe the Brethren.
There are a bunch of Anabaptist ones too. I read an article. They're in a library. They're in a college library over near Philadelphia. So I'm not sure. Linda, yes.
There are so many divisions and subdivisions of the Amish and Mennonites. Some were more conservative
Yes.
than others, so it is likely that there were some Mennonites who are less conservative than the Amish probably had their images.
Yeah. So Linda Reese responded that there are so many basically subgroups of Amish and Mennonite, just as there are today. That some will drive a car, some will drive a car that doesn't have chrome, some will not touch anything. So that some may have, some groups probably allowed it, some others probably did not. Going down through here, I want to recognize the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art out in Kansas City. They allowed me to use this image right here. Again, hand pretty straight down, 2 books. I didn't mention the chairs. There's little corners of chairs that you can see here, and I've also documented those. I've only documented him using 4 different chairs in his entire 5 depending on what you think about this cat that I'm going to show you. But basically 4 chairs 3 chairs consistently, 1 chair once with a human, and 1 chair once with a cat. And again, now we're moving out. We're in this mid-range between being at the Goodridge house and into his new studio. This is Mariah Hildebrand, who lived on North Beaver Street below the Episcopal Church. So her little card tells us exactly where she lived. However, my research could not find her on North Beaver Street across from the Episcopal Church. Or below the Episcopal Church. Now she's interesting, and she's going to start showing us some of our problems. You see that? Not original. Sometimes what you see was not original. So this is an image from 1850 to 1853, yet the mat comes from a much later date, and the preserver, this is called a preserver, thing around the edges. They realized pretty early on that if they didn't put something around the edges, the tape would come apart and the silver image would start to tarnish. So they came up with taping it and then putting a preserver around the edge. So mat, preserver, case, pad over there in the red. Here's Elias Ebert. The Eberts controlled a large area of land in the northeast of York City. Ebert's Lane is over there, right past, that's past Sherman Street, a couple streets. Tremont, thank you. So there's Elias Ebert. And again, you just see the same thing over and over again in a lot of these images. 2 books, kept using the same 2 books. For years, he used the same 2 books. I've measured those books, and he's using the same books. I've checked the little bent corners and everything. Now we get our first image. It's just so cute. And this one, thanks to Carol Kane Woodbury and William H. Kane III. This is 2 of their ancestors, Amanda Hay and Clara Maria Hay. And this is the first time, you can barely see it, you see the Bobbin Chair in the back corner. I had to go, they let me go to their house just to try and get it was so hard to get a picture of that image. But you also notice, if you haven't yet, we're getting into something. Look at the cases. See the case, front case, recto, verso, and mat. Recto is the front of the case, verso is the back, and then the pad. They're all matching up. And so I dated these independently, but now you're seeing also that the cases show consistency. Here's another gentleman. Again, this is from Ross Kelball, a collector down in Maryland.
Michael, another 15 minutes, and that includes questions.
Okay, I will move pretty rapidly here. Same thing. This is one out of my collection, another one out of my collection. This one was tough because there's no table or anything, but if you look really close, you can see a tiny bit of the Bobbin Chair right behind him. And you know, he's in a good Goodridge case, you know, solid Goodridge case, but you can take any image and put it in any case. So this one, because he wasn't anything unusual, there's not much reason for him to be put into a Goodridge case. If you had something really fancy and put it into a Goodridge case, it would make it much more valuable. But putting a normal looking guy into a Goodridge case. So this is the first guy I ever bought here. Here's one from the Clements Library collection in the University of Michigan. And now you see the case has just changed and it's moved up a little bit, 1851 to 1853. You get the same case, and now you're, oh, that's another one from my collection there. And by the way, they're over here. You can look at them afterwards, the ones that are in my collection. Here, in case you didn't know, this was a thing. They didn't have, when somebody died, you wanted to remember them. Post-mortems. There are a lot of pictures of, early pictures of dead people and dead babies. It's really sad, but they wanted a memento of their loved ones. And like, it's not like now where you got a million pictures on your phone. You know, they would come with their little baby to the studio. Sometimes a photographer would make a super special trip and go out to the people's house. This one I'm still trying to figure out. It's here in the collection, but the name doesn't match the date here. The name of the person that they say it is, and this happens with history all the time. 2 generations later, they're like, oh yeah, that's Grandma so-and-so. Yeah, Grandma so-and-so didn't die at the time that this thing was taken. So we got to work on it. It came from the Hans family in Manchester, Mount Wolf area. This is an interesting one that I'm really working on. We need facial recognition work here. So I've collected some pictures of the Fisher children. So these are potentially the children of the judge that oversaw the trial that sent Glenalvin Goodridge to his eventual death. This is here in the York County History Collection, but needs more work for authentication. It says that the comment literally says possibly Fisher children. So I'm going to be looking for some facial experts because we have pictures of some of these children when they're older. But now we need some people that know how to do that, you know, that have an eye for that. This is one of my favorites because I got this from somebody. Well, this was only listed as Susan Edgar in, I can't remember the cemetery, but it's down near Winterstown. And it didn't even say York County on it. I was just like, okay, that's in York. Is it Bermudian something? No, that's because that's out west. I can't remember the name of the cemetery right now. But I was able to find out who she was, and then through census data and other things, actually find out who the 2 children were in here. So this is one of those, again, through support of Frank and Rebecca Countess, I was able to purchase this, do all the research to identify the individuals that are in this image. And she lived in York when this was taken, and then later lived out. Her husband died in 1860 and left them in bad shape. Now we get into some of the Latimers. This one was very difficult to put together, and I'm sure there could be some questions on this. But what I'll show you is that he's in a half case, so the lid's missing, but that half case matches the back of her case. And then there's something I was showing Linda earlier, somewhere around 1853, Glenalvin Goodridge. So you got to imagine, you get these silver plates and you have to buff them perfectly to get the image on it. Big process. And Glenalvin got some kind of machine that required little nicks in the plates. So if you can find these nicks, it's yet another thing that can help confirm it. So this guy has the right nicks. And he's also in the family where they just keep going to Goodridge. And then the case matches also. So that's what I'm basing this one on. It's probably one of my weaker weaker cases. What am I at?
Time to start asking questions.
Okay, well, I've got to get through a couple more here. So this is the most important image I believe that we have, and that is the wife of Judge Fisher, the second wife of Judge Fisher. This is who he would have been married to when he was overseeing the hearing, and then two of his children. And this was through the assistance of Frank and Rebecca Countess and Casey Waters and Fine Daggs. Casey Waters and Aaron Waters, their dad was a world expert on these, and they've become great friends of mine and really helped me in a lot of this stuff. So this isn't just Helfrich in his bedroom figuring this stuff out. I'm actually working with some of the world-known experts on these things, and I'm very honored. Then he went into the Susquehanna backdrop. I love this. He used this for a couple years. Melinda Shriver Miller. Here's one. Thank you, Linda Reese. And we are going to get a better picture. Her image is over there on the table, and it is spectacular. Photograph, not spectacular, but we're going to get a better one. But this guy's great. He's got kind of long locks, and I don't know. He's some kind of funny dude. Everybody know about the bots, and out in, where are they? They're just north of Wolf's Church, right? In that Cadorus Valley kind of thing. So this is Sarah and Rosa. And this is another one. The case isn't right. Her husband got this case and got this photograph at another photographer's and then put the old photo in with it. So you couldn't use that to judge. Here's some more of the Latimers. Another wonderful, here they're starting to use the extra sky, or they've been using the extra skylight. Now he just moved to ambrotypes. So now he is 1855. He has just switched everything over to ambrotypes, and you start seeing all these Latimers. The case mats get very colorful here. Quarter plates, a little bit larger ones. There's only 2 examples known. They've got to be out there. Both have this. They have the same cases. I call that the gold. I had to make this one up, the golden keyhole, because it doesn't exist in any of the catalog. It's probably made locally, somewhere within the 30-mile radius here. Beautiful one from Christopher Buckingham, a York City resident. Just love this purple pad. Really incredible image. This is a good one. This one, you'll see what I call a smoky cloud backdrop. You can see a little bit of it on this one too. But these are the Latimers. They always come in for Christmas pictures. They're December 54, December 55, December of 56, 54, 55, and 56. They're coming in for Christmas pictures. This poor young man, also a Latimer, he died in 57, so we know that this wasn't any later than 57. The mystery cat from Ross J. Kelbaugh. In an earlier Goodridge, with an earlier Goodridge pad, in a case that's known as the Boston case. This one's an interesting mystery I'm going to have fun working on some more. Bartow Latimer. Then one of what I think is one of the newest discoveries, I don't think anybody, maybe Allison had documented the 9th plate. I've been able to find quite a few of these now. After he went bankrupt, or right around when he went bankrupt, the whole thing was changing. There were lots of photographers now, and he had to find a niche. So he started making these little ones. Sell more, put that product out there. So I guess, let me get to the last, and I've got questions. There's the Bobbin Chair. That chair you will not find, at least I've looked at tens of thousands of these things, and I've never seen that chair anywhere else. Unique. I will eat my hat if somebody finds somebody else using that chair. Now he moved to a large book, and there's the end of that collection. Now here's what you got to be careful of. Goodridge image looks great. Goodridge case. The mat is from Philadelphia from 1847. The case is from York from 1855 or 1856. Is that a Goodridge image or not? We don't know, but the pieces don't match. The Goodridge tablecloth. This one's from New Bedford, Massachusetts. This is a Whitehurst, probably from Washington, D.C. She's probably from Washington, D.C., but doesn't have a label. But see, that's the Moorish tablecloth. And can you see the little phoenix bird in the center right under her fan? Here's a couple that are in the Smithsonian. I haven't published them in the book, but I wanted to add them in here, particularly because this is Glenalvin Goodridge's wife, Rhoda. And right below it is my mystery one. This is one that I own, no tablecloth, no nothing. It was made before the time that he used put the nicks in the plate. This one is a mystery. This would have been about 1851, but it looks like a possible wedding picture. It's got these beautiful painted flowers in it. They're not seen anywhere else. And here's my last question. This one's for you, Jeff Kirkland. We know that Rhoda is mulatto. So she's partially white, partially African American. And I've got this young lady from 1851. And we were talking about features earlier. Does she or does she not have similar features to Rhoda? You see it? You see it in the eyebrows? You see it in the nose? It's either family or just a strong racial feature connection. So I believe that image over there is of a person of color. And but I have yet to. It's still a mystery out there. So there are still lots of mysteries. There are still hundreds, if not thousands, of Goodridges out there. I hope that you'll make the effort to look through your old stuff. And did I use up all my question time?
No,
No, ask.
Okay. I hope folks enjoyed it. Can I get any questions? Yes, Linda.
How do you know that that's Rhoda?
Because it said Rhoda, September. I'm sorry. How do you know that's Rhoda? So I found it in an auction catalog from 2016. It was later bought by Larry West and recently donated to the Smithsonian. But in the back of the case, sometimes people will write things, and it said Rhoda, September 1859. Very few of these images have anything written in the back. I haven't done the handwriting analysis, but I plan to. Remember, I asked you for your handwriting sample because she has handwriting in the back of her case. So you would have to do a little handwriting analysis and prove that is indeed his handwriting. Yes.
You mentioned that when the tape breaks down, the images become tarnished.
Yes.
Over time.
I mentioned that when the tape breaks down, the images will become tarnished over time.
Is there a rehabilitative process, and is there someone here in the York area who can take daguerreotypes?
Absolutely. The two people that I mentioned earlier are masters at it, or experts at it. That's Erin Waters and Casey Waters. Erin is right over in Lancaster. She's done some of my images. Casey Waters is up in New Hampshire, but there are others that can also do that. They'll put new glass on it because the glass can break down over time and put chemicals onto the plate that'll then cause other issues. Get the moisture out of it. So yes, absolutely.
So you can take images that are almost obscure.
Well, that's a whole different science, and yes, you can. That is a little bit of a disputed thing. Some people, my opinion is, if they're obscure, what use are they? And there are ways to do it, electrolysis or basically kind of thing to take the tarnish off but it definitely is there's a little controversy in that of whether or not you should do that to images. And you have to be very careful, particularly if they're images that have been colored. I haven't talked about tinting and painting. When you tint or paint an image and you do some of those processes, you can lose those colors. What else?
You piqued my interest, and I after reading Jaworski's book and different things, I've never come across that reference to the Moorish tablecloth. And I was wondering if they had any connection to the Moorish people or the Moorish faith.
No, it reminded me of things in the Alhambra when looking at it. Let me see if I can, how did I do this? Whoops. Yeah, you see that? Yeah. It just looks to me like an Islamic design. And so, you know, when you're coming across new things that don't really have definitions or names, you're like, what's a good name? You know, this looks like a golden keyhole. Okay, it's now the golden keyhole case. This is a Moorish tablecloth. If somebody comes up and lets me know, I will definitely alter that. I did forget, I had one more slide, and that was a very important slide. This is said to be Glenalvin Goodridge's mother, and it very well might be. But I will tell you that that image was taken around 1851, maybe 1849. We have seen that, well, no, it actually had to be likely after 1850. That is a tablecloth that I have seen used in San Francisco. I've seen it used in New England. I've seen it used in Charleston, South Carolina. I've never seen it used by Glenalvin Goodridge. So if this is Evelina Goodridge, if this is the mother of Glenalvin Goodridge, he took his mother's image and put it in one of his cases. But that image, again, I will, unless somebody can show me somehow, I mean, look, the pose isn't the same. The table, I'm determined to find a matching one to this with this tablecloth and with that exact size table and that pose. But it does not seem to be. And I haven't been able to get, it's with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources for some reason. And I haven't gotten any responses from them when I asked about this. So, any other questions? Yes, Jim.
First Friday, we go to the Goodridge Center. Will we see any of Glenalvin's work?
You will see some blown up paper copies. First Friday, I'm not sure if they are open right now. They're open. Are they?
They're opening their Festival of Trees.
They're opening their Festival of Trees. Excellent, excellent. Because I know there was just some discussion about when their operating hours were. So no, as of right now, there are not any. We're building the collection, but we also have to build the security and the environmental conditions to make sure that these things will be safe. Again, I'm just gonna, the approximate value of what we put together so far is about $4,000 to $5,000. Possibly more than that. So you can't just, and that's with 3 images. So you can't just put them out there.
How many Glenalvin Goodridge pieces have been confirmed, and how many are, let's say, in doubt nationally or internationally?
I have been able to, again, I've shown you my methodology. It is really up to the York County History Center to determine or get an additional person in to verify what I have done. Up until this time, I'm not sure that they have considered them. I know I've seen possible on some of the images and things like that. I did a very, very thorough study of them and have shown my methodology. So I am aware of 65 images at this current time, 65 or 66. Again, I know there are many, many more out there. Any other questions? I know I'm supposed to wrap up. Yes, Nicole?
There was one online asking if there's any indication that he worked in prints, albumin prints.
I'm not sure of albumin prints, but there is this quote from the July 9th, 1861 York Gazette that says Goodridge takes a 4-inch by 8-inch negative of the 4th of July procession from the window at the Hartman building. So at the southeast corner of the square, he's taken an image out of the building, and it says the photograph is considerably larger than the negative. Well, the only way you can have a photograph considerably larger than the negative is if it's on paper. Because the tintype is on the tintype, and I think I'm accurate in that statement. Ambrotypes and daguerreotypes are one of a kind. You can take a picture of a daguerreotype to make a copy, but that thing is a unique piece of art, which is another reason why I love it so much, that these are each pieces of art.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you all for your time, and thank you for coming.
Yeah.